Hi everyone, welcome to the Preservation Carpentry segment of Open House. I'm here with Stephen O'Shaughnessy, who's the head of the program and also a graduate. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing fine, how are you?
Good, good.
Preservation Carpentry at North Bennett begins about 1984-85, founded by Robert Adam, who taught the program for 24 years. And I taught alongside of Robert for several years. He's now retired, but still an advisor to this program. So I speak to him, I spoke to him yesterday, the man who founded the program. And the idea was, back then, he pitched the idea, you know, we have all this historic architecture here in New England. We don't have any training for people who need to learn very specific skills to work on old buildings. What do you think? And that pitch led to Robert being given the opportunity to teach at first a one-year program, and then the very next year they hired an assistant and it became a two-year program, and it has been ever since. So it's around 1985. And I've been teaching here as a department head and teaching for 16 years, in my 16th year of teaching. And Preservation Carpentry is now one of the 8 programs. What do? We work on, they used to say that Preservation Carpentry was the restoration of pre-20th century architecture. But as time is slipping forward, we have been approached by folks who are loving their, 1917 bungalow or their 1920s modernist. That happens. So let's just say restoration of early architecture. That's basically what we do. And it's a 2-year program, as I mentioned, where we take students in year 1 and teach them fundamental skill building. That's done at the bench, in our machine shop, and in the field, working out in the field in actual historic context on a building. And most of their time is spent at their benches and in the machine room in year 1. And in year 2, with those fundamental skills in place, they continue on with the second instructor, Michael Burrey, who we will meet today. You'll say hello to Michael. And Michael can take them to go and do bigger projects, more elaborate projects that require the basis of skills, understanding of skills, hand skills, machine skills, and then build upon that to do more complex work.
We do also have a 9-month carpentry program that is modern, residential, stick framing, and finish work. When I compare preservation carpentry and carpentry for people that are trying to think of which one is a better fit for them, sometimes I'll make mention that in the 9-month carpentry program, you will learn to install prefabricated doors and windows. In preservation carpentry, you'll have the opportunity to learn how to build a panel door and a window and install it. And then so that lends itself to sort of the richness of the program, the length and the depth of the program. What else can you think of in sort of comparing or sharing the specialization of preservation?
I'll bring up his name again. Robert Adam realized pretty quickly that the content of what he wanted to teach was too great to cover in 1 year. And yet the carpentry program continued on. And carpentry as a program, as a 9-month session, is a good fit for folks who want to work in new construction or renovation. Still renovation is possible within that, particularly who's teaching the program. But perhaps a fit for someone who needs more immediate gratification in the end of the day's work. What have I accomplished? Okay, let's move on. And the pace is fast. You're learning a lot of things, but moving in quick succession through the curriculum because you have 9 months to cover. Great skills are learned. It's really a great fit for certain types. Now, preservation, given 2 years, we could stretch and slow things down a bit, develop more skills, particularly hand skills, and touch upon more topics that are at the periphery of carpentry as well. For instance, learning in different mediums like metal and stone and lime plaster and mortars, and they're always with us in these old houses. And we expose students to this and learn, have them put their hands in this work as well. And we've had quite a few graduates who have peeled off not from proper carpentry, but have gone into restoration masonry or gone into metalwork. And so our curriculum includes these other topics as well.
That's great. Yeah. So it's very focused, but also through the experience that you have, it can lead to a different pathway based on the interest you pick up, the skill, and the opportunity.
That's right, that's right.
So Stephen, you mentioned in comparing these two programs that there's sort of maybe a type of person that is attracted to either pathway.
That's right.
Would you share with us what are some of the things that you either see in people that are heading towards preservation where it's a better fit for them, or what kind of qualities do you look for in people?
Okay, well, I look for someone who perhaps is someone who has a bit more patience, someone who can focus and knows this about themselves, that they are maybe someone who really has an interest in history, in reading about historical activities, and of course, having an interest in old houses doesn't hurt. That should be at the core. Someone who really likes to work with their hands and likes history and architecture. With those basic principles, we can take almost anyone fundamentally through the program. We have students from all backgrounds, right? We have 18-year-olds right out of school. Now that school might have been a trade school, and there's the hook, there's the connection. They have already figured out at 16, 17, 18 that they want to work with their hands. So that's a good fit. But we have most of our students are career changers, and their backgrounds are really diverse, as you know. No one knows better than you. We have students that have done all kinds of things in their background, but their interests may still lie with working with their hands, history, and architecture. And with those things, using Robert Adams' progressive method, which is really based on what all the programs are based on, the Sloyd system of progressive fundamental skills built upon more complex sort of building, where we do great things like what I'm leaning on here. I don't know if you can move the camera to the left and up. Our exhibit here at the school, the full-scale reproduction of the 1737 John Hancock Mansion's entryway, which has been a phased project over several years. This doesn't happen with students who've just come into the program. This is a second-year activity after the skills have been laid down, and they can then go and do great things like build doors and windows, do carving, elaborate carving, laying out proportions. This exhibit is great as a showcase for all the things that we do. One of many things that we do.
That's great, and I love this project. Connected to my last question too, around candidates for the program, we get a lot of questions in admissions about do I need to have construction experience before I come here? And I think when I started here, I looked at this program as almost a kind of like a graduate program in some way, where having construction experience could be very helpful. But over time, I think working with you, Stephen, we've been able to identify that there's a spectrum of people where maybe transferable skills or something else. So would you speak about that a little bit, about what experience you might be looking for from people as well?
It doesn't hurt to have someone who has been paid to work with their hands, has a tool belt, experience working on job sites, have worn a tool belt, own tools, understand that environment. It certainly does not hurt, but in no way is it required. Because, again, we start in such a basic way. We start here in this building in the opening days talking about tools and even restoring vintage tools. And there I start to see in my students whether they have this aptitude, which is all we need, is the aptitude to understand that if something is broken, not working, missing parts, can we bring it back? It starts at a base level of the actual tool, which has the capacity for being an heirloom tool to last for them and be a great part of their kit for the rest of their career. And was probably already in someone else's kit and is 100 years old now. So anyway, I use that as the analogy to look at students who have a background that does not include construction, but they are following my lead and are getting it. You can see the lights are going on, and they are following the program.
That's great.
Following the methodology that takes them to become someone who can be paid for their skills, tool belt on the job site. But they don't necessarily have to start with that experience.
Okay, that's great. I think that's fantastic for our audience and our prospective students. This project, like so many, comes out of, I think, networks and things like that. And I know that both first and second year will work on these almost capstone projects year to year, and that there's no shortage of opportunities for you as faculty to choose what best fits curriculum. What I'd like to do is walk down to the Preservation Carpentry program with you.
Sure.
And maybe as we go, could you tell us about how this project, the John Hancock door project, came to be?
Very good. That's a great lead, because you know my answer already. Rob already knows why this is such a special project for our department. Is because of the connection that I drew years ago. I used to work for Historic New England, and they have been a partner organization to us, the largest house museum organization in the country. There are a few employees that work there full-time as preservation carpenters, doing what I did when I worked there 16 years ago. There I learned of this great loss to Boston, to New England, and really the nation, which was a loss of this amazing piece of architecture in 1861, which was the home of John Hancock, one of our founding fathers, and the first signer of the Declaration of Independence. When that house was being threatened to come down, there was an outcry across the city, "Save the John Hancock Mansion." There were posters across the city, and it became a movement. Sadly, the house was lost, but what that did is it sort of became the launching pad for the idea of preserving our early architecture in America. So it became the martyr to that cause. I knew this story long before even coming here to teach. So fast forward to maybe 6 years ago, just complete coincidence, I was working with another partner organization, the stewards of the old State House called the Bostonian Society. There, in one of their storage locations, they asked me, when I was working with them, to accept into our collection some things being deaccessioned. Would you like to see the front door to the John Hancock Mansion? And it came as a complete surprise, thinking, it exists, one, and you saying it's here, oh yeah. So here it comes down the hallway, and due to circumstances that I don't need to go into here, we were asked to become stewards of the door, to take possession of it, to which we immediately built a custom crate, and the wheels started turning. Gee, wouldn't it be great to take this door and show it to the world, show it to folks and let them know what an amazing place this used to be, this building, this spurred the whole movement of preservation carpentry, and our program. See, there's a direct connection between saving architecture and what we do here at North Bennett. So that resulted in what I'm leaning on here. This is the reproduction of the surround to the front door. Now what you're looking at technically is the second story of our exhibit. Really, I'm standing up 10 feet in the air. This is the second story, which will be sitting upon the first story, which is already built and is in storage. So the front door of the house, oh, thank you, Rob. So what you're looking at here is just from here up. All of this, there's the front door right here. This part's already been built years ago from the front stoop behind all these bushes. From here, there's a shutter. There's the door peeking out behind that shutter. And this first part was an exhibit at the old Bostonian Society's location at the old State House for a few years. This went into hibernation, and we started on the second phase, which is the upper portion with the French door. This is a descendant of Hancock here, standing on the balcony on And if you now pan back, you'll see this is what we're looking at here. All these turnings, the pilasters, the Corinthian capitals, the broken scroll pediments, all of this was done from photographs like this and research that students participated in, combing through local historic libraries, looking for photos, looking for ledgers and logs to basically get these details correct. All the proportions taken from photos and research that students did. And this is the example of what can be done. Now, this is done by a group of students, but it's done with basic fundamentals under their belt and then guided by a highly trained expert in the field, Michael Burrey, who you'll meet. So anyway, this has been a great project for us, but not the first and won't be the last. This one it really strikes the heart because of its connection to the start of the movement of preservation.
Yeah, and it becomes sort of meta because it's in many ways the reason why this program exists here.
That's right.
So let's walk down to Preservation Carpentry, and we can walk and talk a little bit, Stephen.
Sure.
It's my understanding that the door and the knocker were separated.
That's right.
Once they destroyed the building and were categorized differently, and not until this project came around were they brought back together. So
that's right. It's pretty amazing that the door knocker that is mounted to the door was separated for 100 years or more, and was on the front door of famous Boston lawyer, and then upon the destruction of that house, gifted back to Bostonian. I don't think that they knew that the door was also part of the collection of Bostonian. Well, it wasn't until our project that the two came together again, probably for over 100 years. And the other part of this is interesting is the lock. You remember we had the door has a big box lock on it. And another partner of ours where we have worked on and off is the Old North Church right here in the North End, right? Another significant architectural gem from the 18th century, connected to the Revolution, of course, the lanterns being hung, Paul Revere, all of that. Well, we found out that they believed they have a key to the front door of the John Hancock Mansion in their collection. Well, we arranged for those to come together, to have the key walked over, just blocks away, and with the locksmithing department head in hand, giving the key to her and putting the key into the lock and watching with a tiny camera with a scope that was inside the box just to make sure there was no damage being done as this key is being turned. We got we got confirmation. We had the key to the front door of the house, a key that was probably, either in John Hancock's pocket or someone working with someone assisting him.
Wow.
Yeah, these type of connections, and the way to work with other departments is always great too.
Yeah. I have a mutual friend with Bob Miller. His name is Cliff Odell, and he's a black playwright who, when this project went over to the old State House, he wound up writing a play that piece was the centerpiece of the play, and he wrote it from the perspective of John Hancock's servant.
Yes.
And so in this way, we can never tell the life that is given in addition to what the work is that we've done. And I just think it's such a lovely story that we focus on things here that sometimes are so specific, but there really is a universality to the work. So
that's right. And sometimes they take a life of their own and take you on a path that you hadn't expected.
Cool. So we're coming down the hallway to the Preservation Carpentry program. They have a project that they're working on right now that involves a lot of machining, and we'll go through the machine room, but a lot of times when I'll give a tour, I like to stop in this hallway because, like the Hancock project, we can see some other projects here that the program and Stephen have been involved in.
First Parish Church. So here's a poster showing you the front of the building. We worked on this building for several years. Phased restoration of windows. part of the curriculum in the first year of the program is historic window sash restoration. So what we'll do is, an historic building like this, we'll go to the site, we'll carefully remove the windows, we will bag them and tag them, and then bring them to an off-site location where we do some removal of some lead paint, removal of the glass, we bring the wooden carcass of the window back here, and we'll go through the repairs needed, the woodworking repairs, of which all old windows need some. And so here's an example of a great church here in New England that we've worked on, and then another phase, one which was more complicated and was better suited to our second year students. So now the same client working with first year students becomes a client for a second year. And this poster here describes the restoration of the steeple. And this image here is the finished product here, the steeple. And so from this point up was a project for second year students. And this gives you a little better view. Gives you an idea of the pile of debris that we started with and the remnant of the piece. And you can see the general condition here when we began. And then all kinds of statistics that we've been able to hammer, like 7,842 man hours. And then I'll jump to costs and sash restored, 32 sash, columns that are restored, right down to 400 cups of coffee consumed. That was just thrown in there for fun, but it involved a lot. Framing, finish, carving this 210-pound mahogany pineapple, which was gilding. We learned to do gilding here, woodworking gilding, as well as making reproduction windows, reproduction components, shingling, metalwork. It was very comprehensive. And we look for projects that have suit and check a lot of boxes when we're going to tackle something as comprehensive as that. So that was a great project. Other projects here you can see, we learn, first year students learn basic construction skills by doing new construction. Sometimes it's building sheds. We're building sheds right now. The noise in the background are my students milling up Douglas fir and mahogany to build some double doors for those sheds. Sometimes we work on site to learn construction details. This addition, plugged onto the side of a 19th century building, was one of those projects. We can see students who are putting trim up and transom windows, sliding doors, and trimming out, and roofing, and so forth. And what else? To the left, we have an 18th century woodworking mill, an 18th century site down on the South Shore of Boston called Hatch Mill. Here we did timber frame restoration, as well as producing new timbers, replacing timbers, restoring old material, and putting a whole new roof on it. So red cedar on double strapping. This was guided through Michael Burrey at MLB Restoration. And so that was a good project too. Anyway, there's lots of stuff here.
Wasn't the hatch mill unique because the saw was, I don't know if it was reciprocal or like for its time, it seemed to be a unique kind of saw to be used.
So the hatch mill is a great site because it's a remnant of earlier technology with a 7-foot sash saw, up and down water-powered sash saw. Right next to the site is a man-made pond, and it's got gates, sluice gates, and overshot wheels, and that's still an ongoing adventure there.
Great.
It needs more time, more money, but we're connected to it, and we're happy to work here again.
Cool.
Showing you some of the sash work. Here's a student all suited up, masks and Tyvek suits, pulling windows out, and some timber framing work over here.
And this barn, I think, is from sometime around 1720.
1791.
I was close.
So this barn here in this image is 1791, and this was sort of finishing up that big project, which was the restoration of the barn, and it went from foundation, stone foundation, timber frame repair, new construction timbers if needed. It was swinging axes and hewing logs into timbers. It went everything all the way down to making shingles. So it's very comprehensive again. So what you see here in this tent, and another shot here, these students are on shaving horses, and what they're doing is producing pine shingles. And then they go up to a planing bench and then up onto the roof. So in this image, this roof is being constructed, and it's being done completely the way it would have been done in the 1790s.
And I think while this exercise is not something that happens for every single class, the concept of this exercise where you're going to take a yellow pine log and break it down to a place where you're making shingles for the specific project and then putting them on, this ought to resonate with people as the type of work that they're attracted to. Let's go inside.
Okay, it's going to be noisy. Safety glasses on.
Yep. And we'll head to the first year bench room. How are you?
So where you are now is the first year program bench room. Right, so we've crammed in, there's usually more benches in this, but you can see these are large German benches that are very nice to have in our program here. And we do all kinds of things here. As I mentioned, the program begins with tools, tool restoration, goes on to basic wood construction. We get out in the field, we're building sheds as a way to learn stick framing, modern construction. But unlike an approach that carpentry with 9 months to go might build a shed, we can slow things down. We can do things like salvage old doors and retrofit them by taking measurements and building jam units around them. And that's what's going on here. What we have here are white oak thresholds that are getting coats of varnish. So we'll custom make from rough material, and that in itself is the lesson on the material, the wood, its nature, its properties, and then taking the material and going through step by step through the woodworking machining portion. Handwork is probably is always a part of it. What hand tools go to that's finished. And what we've done is, you can go to Home Depot and you can buy a threshold of a generic nature, but this project calls for more customization. So we'll start with the rough material, mill it and profile it and bring it to the shape that corresponds to what we're doing. Also, this white prime material is the jam unit. So you can imagine there's a vertical nature of this, creating a box inside of which the doors will fit, right? And so this is 3 separate sheds, so 3 separate wide doorway openings that will have double doors, and the noise in the background are the folks out there milling the material to thickness, width, length, and then profiling it in our shaper for a tongue and groove joint, because these pieces will be fit together with tongue and grooves. So it's again all done custom. So that one example might distinguish us from carpentry,
right?
In that we are building new construction, aren't we? But we're bringing to it something a bit different. We are turning the construction of it in some ways into a more of a learning opportunity by customizing components.
That's great. And then I'm curious, the drivers for this project that we're looking at right now. Is it that it's a client project? Is it that you're racing against the weather because it's an external project, or is it curriculum?
It's in the curriculum.
Yep.
To learn stick framing. Sometimes that's building sheds of a generic nature, 10 by 12, of a certain height, certain roof pitch, windows in certain places, and we can repeat that each year to teach a whole bunch of lessons. But occasionally, we'll have a client contact us and say, hey, I'd like to have something bigger, something taller, something built on my property. And we have done that. This past, the crew that you'll meet, the second year students, had a bit more of that opportunity. So one of the sheds they built, which was a much larger structure, was built right on site, right on the client's property, and it included site preparation and foundation installation. So we put in concrete foundation for it, and then began building the structure. We're going to do that again next year. We've got a client where we're going to build on their property. But in between which, we'll build at a place called Brookwood Farm. Brookwood Farm is our sort of unofficial right now. Knockwood might become more official.
Okay.
Location in south of Boston, about 10 miles, 11 miles from here, called Brookwood Farm. And it's a 60-acre site owned by the state, the division of which is the DCR, Department of Conservation and Recreation. And I figured that for now, for 12 years, we've been working on this great farm setting where we have unlimited headroom because we're out in the farm, we're out on that setting, and we have restored buildings, we have built on the property as well. None of these structures stay, we're just using the space, and so we consider it a bit of our off-campus satellite location. So we spend part of our year there.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, I have a healthy respect for finish work and what its drying time is, but I'm curious if anyone is interested in talking with us in our audience here. Like you, before you came to the program, I feel like there are so many mysteries on the pathway to coming to North Bennett Street School for Preservation Carpentry. So I'd love to hear from you on sort of what your pathway has been in coming here. Would you be interested in sharing?
Sure.
Thanks, Margot.
So my name is Margot, part of the first year program here in Preservation Carpentry, and what brought me to the program was a bit of COVID luck. Tinkering around the house and realizing, I went through college, I have a degree, and I am not a student who's built for desk work. And this passion kind of came alive within COVID, and I, like many of you, tuned into the open house, and it felt like everything and more was within North Bennett Street School.
Very
and,
cool.
Yeah, everything that's hands-on, the style of work we do here, the learning styles, everything is something that I never would have expected, but have been delighted to be a part of because it suits me as a learner, and I finally feel like a capable, competent learner.
That's great. That's great. If there was something that you could share with someone that you didn't know, I mean, I feel like my team is always trying to figure out how to fill that gap of helping people to transition to thinking of coming this way. But we're human. We're going to miss stuff. From your perspective now, what are some things that you could, like advice that you could give to someone who is thinking of coming in this direction?
The advice that I would give is that you do not need any specific skill set to be a part of this program. You can come in, and the way that Stephen is as a teacher and the ability for growth is extraordinary. And if you really are interested in something like this is the opportunity for you to step in and come into your own, even with very, very minimal experience like I had, and learn and feel extremely competent. And it doesn't take much but the passion, and I think that sets the school apart, is that every single student here has the same passion that I came in with as well.
That's great. Thank you so much, Margot.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa, and I am a Preservation Carpentry first-year student. I watched the open house last year, like you folks at home are doing now, and was uncertain about the program. I was interested, and I think I even attended a summer open house with Rob, and I was still kind of skeptical and not sure if I would have the skills to be here. I don't come from a construction background at all, and I've been a flight attendant for 18 years. I'm still currently a flight attendant, and the transition has been a huge one and continues to be. But like Margot said, the growth potential in this program is like exponential. You come to school every day and you're doing these things that are completely out of your comfort zone sometimes, and you just can't believe you're doing it, and it's amazing. I'm I am learning to use table saws, and I'm learning joinery and things that I've always wanted to do. And it's amazing. I couldn't be happier that I'm here. It's challenging, but I think it is so rewarding, and I'm so glad that I kept my curiosity when it came to the open house and the info sessions, and kept asking more questions, and ultimately went with my gut feeling was this is the place for me.
How are you, A?
Good, how are you?
Good. Will you share with us a little bit about your story, about how you kind of found Preservation Carpentry as a program to come to, and kind of what the process you went through in order to make the leap to come here? And
Yeah. I'm A. I am the kind of person who would do this program probably. I really like doing something really tedious until it's totally finished and tuning something to perfection. And that has been, it hasn't been so much of a learning curve for me like other things have, but I come to this program without that much experience, a little bit of shop experience, teensy tiny bit. And I think the thing that really served me well before I came to this program, and what I would, the knowledge I would share, is doing 1 or 2 intro to woodworking classes before you come here. I think it's nice to have been in a shop situation where you are tasked with, taught how to use the machinery, how to mill wood, and how to cut on a table saw. I think helped send me into this experience with a lot more confidence. And it's one of those things, you spend a couple $100 and really see whether or not you want to do this.
it's a great point.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how are you liking now?
I keep telling everybody that I like this program even more than I thought I would.
Oh, good.
I was like, I knew I was going to be obsessed with this, and it's even more fun than I thought it was going to be, which is crazy, because I already know how much fun this is for me.
Right.
So it's crazy that it's even more fun.
Has there been sort of a moment or an experience, to date where you've been like, oh wow, I'm really surprised that how cool this is, or some kind of aha moment?
Yeah,
Can you share?
I think that when Stephen took us through the restoration of planes, I think that was a big eye opener for me, because it's to be able to take a plane from 1867, patented in 1867, and bring it back up to my use today. And the fact that it's just as useful as a tool, serves the same purpose, and it is of as much use today as it was, over 100 years ago. I think that just, that's blew my mind.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's like
It's so cool.
The continuity and the application outlives us all.
Right.
We get to be a part of it.
Right. Well, in some of the readings, I think James Garvin wrote this book called The Architecture of Northern New England, or something like that. And one of his points is that timber framing, what we learn in the second year, is just as relevant to timber frames today. If you're going to build a timber frame, you're going to build it in much the same way that you would have built it throughout the centuries. And I think that, that is getting down to the roots of how to make a building is so fun and so rewarding.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go with Stephen, and we'll go around the dog leg here, and we'll go visit second year Preservation Carpentry.
Okay, there you go. Yep.
Hey Michael, how are you?
Michael, good timing. Don't you go anywhere.
Go on.
I guess you can. You're allowed to.
So where are we now, Stephen?
We're in a sort of a hybrid space in our department. It's a combination machine shop, but it's also bench space for 3 students. So behind me there's one of these benches, but to the left, behind these plexiglass screens, is our lathe, one of our lathes, which isn't being used right now, but when it is, we've got these screens because there's somebody sitting just a few feet away. So this space is more flexible, where most of the time it's bench space. Sometimes we need the specialized gear like a lathe, or around here, this hollow chisel mortiser machine. This mortising machine is plowing out these mortises in these plank frame thresholds that are being made in second year students. But right next to it, there's a drafting board. So this is a bit of a flexible space.
So we're going to head into the second year bench room now. Michael.
This is a Michael project.
The Michael project. So what we have here, Memorial Hall is a 1791 federal period house that we're doing some preservation work on. It's over in Charlestown, Massachusetts. It's been converted over to, in 1886, the veterans from Civil War purchased the building and they turned it over to their Veterans Hall. I think Steve might know more about the history of it at this point, but what we're doing is we're restoring the front facade and the side elevation to the look it had in the 1888 through 1920s time period. So we're taking down parts of the plank frame windows and restoring the sash to the 1888 time period, repairing the plank frames and the clapboard and front door surround, and so all that is being reworked and preserved.
That's great.
So all the students are taking on different parts of the project. Some are doing clapboards, some are doing, most are doing the plank frame windows. You can through the bench room. You can see all the parts that we took off. The original 1791 windows are in here, and these are the ones. There was only 4 that we could really restore back to full use.
And the other ones you're going to have to reproduce?
Yeah, we're reproducing the rest of them. So you can see the patching in to replace elements that have been lost or broken away over the years. Any little rot pockets that might need to be filled in. So each one of those is part of the curriculum in terms of just repairing something and keeping it going for another 100 years or 100 and some odd years.
So this makes me think about the concept of sustainability in construction. And I think I've heard Stephen say before that there's really nothing more sustainable than wood. And as I look at these windows that are being reproduced, this thought occurs to me. Will either of you talk to that concept?
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of green building, there's kind of a movement back to sustainable building practices. But the most sustainable building is one that already exists, and these are all produced without any fossil fuels. They're done under water power and human power, and they exist already. So keeping these buildings continuing on into the next centuries, makes a lot of sense in terms of environmental awareness and sustainability.
That's right. And although in the 19th and 20th century there are hazards that, like asbestos and like lead paint, that we deal with. Of course, everything we touch has lead paint, but really, the building materials themselves are what? They're wood and glass and stone and naturally mined lime and horsehair and wood, of course. So these in some ways are healthier homes, these vintage homes, and they are adaptable to modern living and should be protected and preserved and work. And you can even work around what would otherwise be strict code compliance on new construction. Most towns allow you to work an historic building into a livable context by approaching code, and we've done that many times. In this particular case, this is a hall essentially. It's more of a space that is a nonprofit. They're a nonprofit organization, and so I'm sure that in another context, perhaps if it was still a private home, even so, I think that the owners would have been allowed to make some restoration and recreation of original parts and not have to put in a set of new windows into the building. So we're giving the front elevation, which is our responsibility primarily, the front elevation, a facelift and reviving and restoring some of the original components. But talk about the windows. So the interpretive time period which was dictated by both the client as well as their hired preservation consultants and preservation architect, came up with that 1880 something time period.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so none of the windows in the building now are connected to that time period. So a new set of windows had to be, right? And so talk about the
Yeah,
windows.
the new sashes, everything had been replaced by vinyl replacements or some just quick and dirty windows just to get it tight to the weather again. And so we're taking those out and reproducing the sash that once existed there, Victorian sash, so 1888 time period, 1/1 sash.
Yeah, and interestingly, students who began on that project of window making had just learned window making and were producing windows for 2 project houses, one of which was Memorial Hall we're talking about. The other one was also being overseen by the same group of preservation architects, right?
Yeah.
And that's in the town of Canton. Same place as Brookwood Farm, of course, same town. But anyway, those students timed out at the end of their graduation. They were right steeped in window making. They had it in their hands, they had the skills down. They offered themselves up to continue and finish and make the windows, install the windows post-graduation, and on commission as a contractor. So that rolled right over from the work they were doing as a second-year student, and then doing it post-graduation as a contractor, essentially. And so that was good to see as well, because it's good resume building.
Yep.
It's good for their ego and their confidence to be producing a product for a real house that we're still working on, but still the same client.
Cool. Thank you. I want to ask one more question of Michael and Stephen, and then I'd like to go and take a look at what some of the students are working on. And I'd also just want to ask you, just for a minute, if you could all just hold off on the hammering. I get that's why you're here, and I promise that we will be gone relatively soon. But I want to ask Michael and Stephen both, do you have any advice for anyone who is thinking of coming in this direction to train for preservation carpentry? From your vantage point, and I know, Stephen, you're a graduate. Michael, you're not a graduate, but you've spent a whole lot of time within this world. So could you please share with our audience what's some advice that you can give to people who are thinking of coming in this direction?
Well, the biggest advice I have, in New England especially, and all across the eastern seaboard and into the Midwest and out in California, everywhere we go, there's historic architecture. California, of course, 1849 is the big time period when things really moved in. So it's not as old as what we have here. The oldest house we have here is 1641. It's the Fairbanks House in Dedham. But there's a huge number of historic houses in the area that all of them need work on them. So there's always work to be done. There's very challenging work and interesting work. It's not the repetitive day-to-day work that a modern carpenter might have, but every house you approach has got a whole different set of issues, similar issues, and there's a lot of owners of those houses who are looking for qualified people to work on them, and there just aren't enough people out there doing that sort of work, and the students who leave here are fully in demand. There's plenty of work to be done through the recession that came, 2008 onwards. I thought I'd be dead in the water, but I actually ramped up and I hired people on during that time period because there was enough work that had to be done then.
Wow, great points. Thank you, Michael. So the jobs are there, the buildings are there. We need people to work on them.
Yep.
That's right.
Stephen,
Yeah.
what about yourself?
Well, I'll add
Oh.
that you've talked to some of my students a few minutes ago. They've shared a little bit about their story and their experience, maybe, and why they came to the program and whether they're liking their experience so far or not. I can tell you, from my experience as a career changer, I had worked in corporate America as a financial analyst. That was my background. I had hobbies that were related to woodworking and finishes, and I always liked old houses. But it wasn't until I had this opportunity, this opportunity to leave, to get off that train and go in a different direction, where I felt that I I use the analogy of a dartboard. You know, I was throwing darts at the dart. I wasn't even on the board in my previous career. And going to school, I was honing in on that bullseye. And so I'll just share that North Bennett, using the Sloyd system, which you may have talked about as it relates to all of our programs, this progressive system can take someone with aptitude and interest in early architecture and working with your hands and carving out a career for yourself in this field. We can get you there. But you have to be prepared. Be prepared financially, be prepared to know that you're going to take a couple of years out of your life and you're going to be spending a lot of money, but this is a great investment. This is a huge investment in your future, doing something you love to do. And I can say as an instructor and contractor that really, I know it seems sort of hokey because I'm just like the slogan the school is using, if you do what you love, you do what you love every day or something like that. And that's really the case. And I think that we've got a lot of graduates out there that have come through the program that have been given a new start, and so we are sympathetic. I am sympathetic. We really understand the challenges that our students and the big risks that they're taking to make such a change. But we can tell you from all of these testimonials you're hearing, and I would think that if you talk to graduates who've been out in the field for a while, they'll also share the same heartfelt.
I can verify that.
Yeah. You know, this is it's a special place. There's really nothing else like it in the country, and so with knowing that, you'll know that you found safe harbor here, and you'll learn a lot. You'll work hard, and you'll develop really good skills that will pay off. You'll be able to go out and be that specialist in the trades. You'll have new construction skills, true, but you'll be able to really hone in on this early architecture that we love so much, and take it back to your hometown, your home state, and maybe be the dominant force in your neighborhood. So anyway,
That's great.
Yeah.
I appreciate the tour and
You're welcome.
all of your insight. Thank you so much, Stephen
You're welcome.
and Michael.
So go say hello to some second-year students, see what they're up to.
Any volunteers to speak with us and show you what you're working on?
Yeah, sure.
That's great.
Yeah, so as you heard, we're building some new windows and window frames for Memorial Hall, and this will be the sill of one of the new frames. Right now I'm just cutting mortises for the vertical stiles, and yeah, we've been working on this for a couple weeks. This fall we built a new small structure in sort of 18th century New England timber frame style. Yeah, what else can I say?
I'm curious because I think one of the things I recall about you as a person is I think you have had experience in construction, preservation.
Yeah, well, I'd say the proximate cause, perhaps, of my matriculation is my father-in-law is a book dealer who deals in especially trade catalogs and trade books, especially for preservation. So that's sort of how I heard about this school and really became acquainted with the notion of a specialist in preservation. But long before I got engaged or married, like my first job in high school was as a carpenter's assistant. I've always worked with my hands. I went to a good college, but I just really did not get any joy from the sort of jobs that set me up for, and so I went back to carpentry and ended up here eventually.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing your story. We've talked with a lot of people that have not had a lot of construction experience, so I just wanted to kind of round that out because I think we have such diversity and experience from people as they transition here. I wanted to make sure that we heard from you.
I'd say my experience has served me well, and also read a lot. There's so much to read about this stuff, and it's really so interesting, and it constantly redounds to my benefit that I've read this book or that. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, what are you working on? Share with us.
So I was just sorting through the clapboards for Memorial Hall in Charlestown for that project. And basically I was just sorting them out for length, and then next thing that we're going to do is prepare them to go up. So we have to skive, just kind of slice off the ends so that when we put them together they can overlap and go up on the building. So that's what I'm doing right now.
And so the older piece or original piece there, whatever it is, you're going to make an assessment on, can it be repaired, does it need to be replaced? And
Yeah, I think they've already gone through so this one's just in tatters.
Yes.
It's not good for use anymore. So basically taking the new pieces, make sure that they're the correct length.
Yep.
And then preparing them to replace, the old battered ones.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then would you share with us your story, your kind of journey in coming to North Bennett Street School?
Yeah, I was always interested in DIY things. I bought a house, did a lot of like the baseboard, insulated it, gutted it. So I'd done a lot of that. But growing up, I hadn't had that much. And my dad was one of those people that couldn't change a light bulb without breaking something. So I think I was motivated by that.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I was a teacher for about 16 years. Basically fell out of the love of that and I was looking for something else. And this, after working on my house, I really enjoyed working on old houses. And so, I took that and decided to dive right in and come here.
Good. So the timing was good for a redirection.
Yeah.
You put your time into teaching.
Yeah, and and thank God, because I needed to I don't know, save up some money to come here. But it was good while it lasted, but it's good to have a change, and this was a good segue into the next chapter of life.
Cool. And then with your time here in Preservation Carpentry, is there some experience that you've had that has been sort of an aha moment for you, or that you could talk about?
God, there have been quite a few, I think. Like last year working in PC1 with Steve, it's a lot of hand tools, chisel work, hand planes, stuff like that. And working with those tools is just fun and gratifying, and you just get into a rhythm of things, and it's just smooth sailing. It's just, you just fall into a rhythm, and time goes by and you don't realize it. It's like one of those things.
Yes.
So you have those experiences, just learning the skills. But then this year we're doing timber framing was definitely another one of those moments, in bigger scale, just seeing how things get put together, seeing how they're built, seeing how everything fits together, and just the complexity, but also the simplicity of it. That's been a lot of fun and interesting to learn that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on our open house tour of Preservation Carpentry. I hope that you learned a lot from your visit. If this is a place you're thinking of applying to come and train with us, I absolutely encourage you to do that. This Friday at 11 a.m., you can RSVP for our full-time career training program information session for all of the programs. There are also many other channels that you can reach us. You can email admissions@mbss.edu. You can call the school, and we're grateful for you attending. Thank you so much.